Hi guys, it's Vivian with Mud Pies and Lemonade. I am here to do the first lesson for our new class that's coming up. As you can see, I have two kids' books here. They are from the dollar store. I will not be actually using what's in the book. We will be covering these up. One of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and glue these two books together. I knew that I wanted about 10 or 12 pages for this journal, so I'm going to go ahead and just glue these two together, and then I'll do some more work. As you can see, I'm just taking some Mod Podge, and I am using a foam brush, and I am just putting on a good coat on the front of one of the books. It doesn't really matter which one I use first. They're the same shape and size. So I am just going to glue these together really good. Then I'll turn the other one over and just put another light little coat. I want to make sure that these books are going to stay together. And make sure to get the edges. Okay, now I'm just going to line these books up and make sure that they are very much even. And I am going to just press down on these, making sure that they stay pretty even. And we will let those dry for a while. So the next thing, now that the glue is dried, the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to take some sandpaper. Because this is a slick book, I want it to be able to adhere to the paint to adhere to the book. So I'm just going to lightly sand it. I'm not going to do every page all at the same time. I'll just do it as I work on the pages. But this first week we're going to be working on the cover and then the first two pages. So I will go ahead and get those 3 pages sanded down. And like I said, it doesn't have to be just totally sanded, just enough to rough it up so that it's not just slick, so that it'll make it easier when we start working on the pages. Okay, then I'll just take a paper towel and a little bit of water and just kind of wipe them down. Make sure that all the dust and dirt is off of them. Now, this is one of the parts that I've already had my class working on. I've been working with them for a few days now. And one of the things that we always do every year, excuse me, at church, is we talk about, instead of making like resolutions, we do a word of the year. We did this for several years in a row, and I just continued. So this year I felt like I was being called to do more, to step out of my comfort zone and do things that I wouldn't normally do. So my word for the year was boldness. So in taking that word, I just started doing some research. Animals, insects, what would fit with the word boldness. And I came up with a dragonfly. The dragonfly has a Christian meaning of the winds of change, a deeper meaning to life. All of that just kind of felt like it went together with my word, boldness. So those are things that as you are working on getting your book ready, you can just kind of stop and think about what word resonates with you, what animal goes with that word or symbol or insect, like a butterfly, a dragonfly, a bumblebee, you know, any of the animals, bear, wolf. There's so many to choose from. So once you find your word, then you would just do the search and figure out which animal goes with your word. So as I get ready to do my first page, one of the things that I did was just pull out some scrapbook papers. I'm going to use these. I've got some music paper and just some different patterns here. It's not really going to be seen that much. It's just going to give some texture to the pages. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I want the first 2 pages to kind of go together. So I'm just going to kind of start ripping that up just so I can glue that down. For this part, I'm going to use some matte medium. I'm just going to give my pages a healthy dose of matte medium. And again, I'm just going to use one of these sponge brushes and just coat that really well. And I know there's going to be some excess on there, but once I start laying down my papers, I'm going to take some of that and just kind of go over the pages as well. And I'll continue doing this until both of my pages are covered. Okay, so now you can see that the papers are on there. It is completely dry. So now I'm just going to take some acrylic gesso. I am going to use an old card, just an old gift card, and I am just going to generously cover most of this paper. And again, I'm not really worried about covering all of it. I do want a good bit of it covered, and even the background where it had the different colors that were still showing. I'm not trying to be real neat with it. Again, this is just adding more texture. But I do want to make sure that that is pretty well covered. So just like that, I'll do this other page and then I will let that dry. Okay, so now both pages are completely covered. So if there's some of the paper, like some of that music paper that you would like to see shine through a little bit more, you can always go back over and scrape some of that off if you got too much on it. If you want some of the paper underneath to show, just go back and kind of scrape a little bit of this off. Then I'm just going to use my dryer. Another thing you can always do is, you know, just take a little damp towel and kind of wipe at it some too. So, but now I'm going to take my dryer and I'm just going to dry these until this gesso is completely dry. Okay, so now that the gesso is dry on my page, I'm going to take a piece of watercolor paper and I'm going to decide the size that I want to use, because I'm going to use this on top of this page that's already here. And I'm just going to cut that out. I'm gonna use just a 4x6. And then I'm gonna save this little piece at the end. Okay, so now that I have my sizes, I think those are gonna be really good. Okay, so now I'm gonna worry about decorating the back of my pages. So for that, I'm gonna pull out my gouache paint and start making some designs. Okay, so since the background shows a little bit and I have blue and I have some pink, I've decided to use this crimson red, a Viridian, a Parisian blue, and a lemon yellow. And I've got some laid out here. And since this is gonna be in big spots and I'm just kind of making a background, I don't necessarily need a certain design. I just want to get some color down. I'm just going to start with my blue and just kind of randomly put some. Now sometimes if I get too much water, it will get runny like that, but I don't mind because it just kind of starts soaking in around it. And I'll just change colors randomly and add colors to my back. And one good thing about this is if you leave it kind of dry, you'll get a darker color than if you add a little bit more water. So you can kind of play with the different shades. I think that yellow is a little bit bright, so I'm gonna just kind of water it down some. Maybe add a little bit more color in with it just to kind of tone it down a little bit. Okay, now that I have my first layer down, I'm just going to dry this and move on to the next layer. Okay, so one thing I'm going to do is add some more texture, and I have this piece of bubble wrap that I've already used before. And since it has blue on it, I'm not gonna worry too much about getting a clean piece. And I'm just gonna give that a good coat of the blue. Then I'm just gonna use it as a stamp, just kind of in random places. Again, we're just kind of creating some texture and some background. And this is an easy way to do that. You can see that mine was a little bit runny, so it kind of like didn't leave exact bubble wrap marks, but that's okay with me. I don't mind that. If you want yours a little bit less runny looking, just use less water when you're applying your paint. Okay, and I think that's enough of the bubble wrap. The next thing I'm gonna get is a piece of variegated cardboard, and I will use that as a stamp with a different color. So again, I'm just gonna take my paint, and I think this time I'm gonna use a different color. I'm gonna use a little bit of red. I'm just gonna put some on here. And this again is just to make some different designs in your background. And if you feel like the lines are getting too thin, Just always add another coat of the paint. And I think that's enough of those. Now I'm going to take my yellow and I'm going to make some run marks with the yellow. So I'm going to get this kind of a little bit wet. I'm just going to start and put some up here across the top. I'm going to take my spray bottle and just kind of wet it. And it's going to run through those colors, and that's perfectly fine with me. I don't mind that. But if you find that you've got too much and you don't like how much is going, just take a rag, blot it off. If you want more, just add a little bit more of the liquid, let it run. And that yellow running through the blue changes the color, of course. So there you go. That is a very simple background. It didn't take anything magical to make it look pretty decent. So the next thing I'm going to do is move this over out of the way, and I'm going to work on my pieces with my word of the year and my insect, which is the dragonfly. Okay, so here's where I'm going to take my piece that I cut earlier, and I am going to use just a regular sketching pencil. And this is my bigger piece, so I want to use it for my dragonfly. So I'm just going to go in here and kind of sketch out what I want my dragonfly to look like. There's so many different shapes that you can do for a dragonfly. And because I chose to do him up here, part of his wing on this side is going to be left off. Okay, so there's my basic outline. And I'm always a little messy smudging when I'm using my pencil. So I think he's pretty good. He fills up most of it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get just some watercolor, because I am using this watercolor paper. Got my watercolor set out here. And I want to stick with those themed colors that I have going on. So I'm just going to get them wet. I'm just going to drop some color. Now again, you can always go back if you want to have it run and have it kind of abstract. And I don't mind that mine goes outside of the lines, because I'm going to fix that when I do some outlining. I'm going to go with a little bit of a brighter pink instead of all just red. Use a little bit of that green in there. I'm going to use kind of a burnt umber color just along his body. bit more of this red where it ran. And a little bit more of the blue because it ran and you can't really see it either. Okay, I'm gonna let this dry for just a second, but I'm gonna let these colors run down the page. I'm not really caring about this color right here so much, so I'm just gonna blot that away and just kind of leave it more in the brown color. But I don't mind, like I said, how it's coming outside of that. I really kind of like that. Now I'm just gonna get this yellow and just load up my brush with some yellow because I didn't add any to my dragonfly. I'm just going to do some spots. And it's starting to pull up a little bit right there at the end. And again, my blue kind of disappeared over here, so I'm going to add a little bit more. This is your art, and you just choose to make it the way you want it. If you like yours inside the line, you don't want all the little spots all around the outside edges, then you do it the way you want it. You make this yours. It's your creativity. It's what's coming out of your brain, your mind, what you're feeling and thinking. So I'm gonna dry this and see where we're at, and then I'll add a little bit more. Okay, you can see with this first layer here that I didn't put any green in there, and I do have green on my page, so I'm going to go back in and I'm just going to add a little bit more color. And I really like the way it is kind of spreading out. I'm just going to add some green. And if you ever look at butterflies or dragonflies, none of them, they're almost like a flower. They don't have equal portions of the same color on each side, which makes it really nice when you're just trying to just add some color, because they don't have to be in the same spot. They don't have to look exactly the same. And again, I'm going to just add some water. And let that kind of run some. I'm having trouble with my bottle here today. And I just, oh, I really like that, how that's running. If it's too much, you just blot it. But I really kind of like the way that's looking now. Now I'm going to go back in with a smaller brush and fix some of that brown on his body. I'm going to dry this, and then I'm going to move on to showing you exactly why I don't mind that the colors run. Okay, now that he is completely dry, I am going to use my Stabilo All pencil and very lightly, if you've worked at all with Stabilo, you know it does not take much. And I'm just outlining just very, very lightly here. So really you could do your whole entire page if you wanted to, and just do it in this format and have just color everywhere, and then turn around and just draw your, in this case, the dragonfly straight on the page. Now I'm just going to grab a very, very small brush and just get it a little bit wet, and I'm going to go over where I just did that Stabilo. And as you can see, it is very water reactive. It's going to move. But now once you put the water on the first time and it moves, once this dries, it's not gonna move again. So I'm just gonna take my time and go a little at a time, outlining. You can see how it's just starting to fill in and look even better. I feel like I needed a little bit longer, so you can always use what you've already got down on your paper and just extend it out. If you want to shade some with it while it's still on your brush, then you can definitely move it around some. I forgot to do these little, it's kind of like where he just left. Make these circles. Now I can step back from it for a second and just look and see, do I feel like it needs more color somewhere? Do I feel like it needs a little bit more added to it? And just kind of see if I really like it overall. And I think that I am going to add just a little bit more. It doesn't really have a lot of yellow. It has the yellow splotches, but not really a lot of yellow. And that Stabilo is not completely dry, so again, it will move a little bit if it's not dry. You can see how it's kind of starting to run just a little bit. And that's okay. It kind of makes little feathers out. I'm going to use a little bit more green down in these bottom wings here. I'm really kind of liking how this is kind of showing a lot of green at the end. And once again, I'm going to spray and let that run. And you can see that the Stabilo was not completely dry. Again, I do not mind that. I really kind of like the way this is going to look once it's all dry and it's not running anymore and it's just settled. I really kind of like the way this looks. So now I'm going to dry this so it will be completely dry. Okay, so now that it's dry, you can see I really like the way that this has kind of a stained glass effect look to it. You can see that the Stabilo has kind of moved some, and all the colors are just kind of meshed together. And I really like the way that that looks. If you want yours straight, you don't want it coming outside the line, by all means. You don't have to use a Stabilo. You can use a Sharpie. You can use a, you know, just a regular pen. You can always use a Pitt pen. You can use a Posca pen. Anything that you have that you want to use. But I really like the way that mine kind of has that feathered effect. the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my small piece and I'm gonna work on my word. Now I kind of want it to also have this same kind of stained glass effect. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna wet my page. So I just sprayed it with water. Then I'm gonna take those same colors and I'm just gonna lace them down. Now I don't want them to stay this bold because I am going to be writing on this. But I'm keeping in my same color palette because they're going to be on pages next to each other and I want them to kind of be cohesive. And I'm just going to spray again. And I'm going to just let it turn it, let it kind of run some. And where it's pulling up right here and I don't really like the way that's starting to look, I'm just going to just kind of blot it, let it run a little bit more. Just kind of dot it off. Now because I've got an open spot over here that doesn't really have a lot of color, I'm just going to go back in, add some color. I seem to have lost a lot of my blue, so I'll just add a little bit more. And it's basically just adding until you get it how you want it. Add a little more green. I'll let this run some. Again, just blotting as you need to get off some of the excess. And then I'm going to dry this and add another layer so that it has a little bit more color added to it. And as you can see, I've lost some of a little bit of the color, so I am going to go in, drop a little bit more yellow, and I'm going to spray it one more time. And I think this time I'm just going to let it sit for a few minutes and let it dry on its own so that some of the color can run. Just kind of run together. Add a little bit more blue there. Maybe a little more yellow there. And just another little touch of green. And spray it one more time. This time I'm just going to let it sit and let it dry on its own. And then I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, now that this is dry and I look at it up against this, I like the color combination. Since this will go in my book and they will be side by side when they're finished. I really like the way that is starting to look. So let me finish up with my word here and then we'll put the pages together. Okay, and sometimes when I'm writing, I do a lot of different styles, different types. Sometimes I'll stamp. This time I'm just going to use a Posca pen and write out my word. So now that I have my two pieces, I am going to get my book and I am going to adhere them in my book. Okay, so now that I have my book pages finished and I have my pieces ready to go on, I am just going to figure out where I want these two to go. Then I'm just going to take some Mod Podge, take my sponge brush again, and I am going to coat the back side. You want to make sure you get your corners really well so that they will stick. Just going to turn this over and place it down. And carefully do the edges so not to smudge my paint. Okay, I'll let that one start drying a little bit and I will go to the next one. Making sure that I get those corners really well. Flip that back over here. Just pressing down in the corners to make sure that they are holding. This one has started coming up some, so I'll just go back in with a little bit more right under the edge and push that back down. I'm just again going around the edges here, making sure that they're holding. And using this thicker watercolor paper, sometimes you have to do it several times to make sure that it holds. It is a thicker paper. Okay, I'm gonna let this dry for a minute and then I'm gonna go in with a few minor details and finish up the pages. Okay, I wanted to make sure that it was good and dry because I just want to go in with my Posca pen again and just kind of make some little doodles around the edge. Again, nothing fancy, just a little doodling, just so that it's not so stark white right at the edge. You can use anything here that you want. If you want to use dots or lines or hearts or stars or any little doodling mark, just to kind of break up that white edge. This one, I think I'm just going to make some little tick marks all the way around it. And again, I'm not doing them like all in the same direction, up and down. I'm just kind of making some little marks just to go all the way around. Just to kind of break up the edge a little bit. And because I want to remember what year this is that I'm working on this, I'm just going to go ahead and put the year and go ahead and put my initials on there. And this is my first 2 pages in my book. It's my word of the year and my dragonfly to reflect the boldness. The next thing we're going to be doing is our cover, so I hope you'll come back and join us. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to finish watching all of the videos to come.